I switch positions.
Clean version.
Like it's gonna be
determine detriment.
Huh?
How do you determine detriment?
Detriment is just gonna be some deprivation of some experience.
It says if the experience is good or bad.
What?
How do you determine whether experience is good or bad?
I'm saying I don't want to deprive somebody of their desired experience. That's what I'm saying.
Wait, can I ask this guy something real quick?
Go ahead.
Okay, but there's a couple of flaws with that, because what some people desire, most people would say is good, and what some people desire, most people would say is bad. So how do you reconcile?
What is that? Which one? What are you talking about? Like, give an example.
Like a minor attracted person, do you think that we should say that it's good for them to fulfill their desires?
To what?
To fulfill their
A
desires.
minor attracted
No,
person.
hold on. Wait. I can't. Hold on. Wait. Hold on. I'm trying to. What are you saying? Say it again.
I'm saying that for the things that people desire can be good or bad, but how do we determine which ones are good and which ones are bad?
Yeah, if a person deprives somebody of their experience, they're the bad person. It's just really that simple.
Let me ask this to few. Have you ever studied ethics?
Yeah, loosely, not formally.
Loosely. So the basic tenets or some stuff about ethics, like if I asked you?
I mean, you can explain it to me if I don't follow.
Like the most basic stuff. Do you know the distinction between normative and metaethics? Because if you don't know that, then it's likely you don't know anything about ethics.
No, I don't know the formal terms now, but I'm sure I can follow if you explain it.
Okay, so I'm already warranted in thinking you don't know anything about ethics. So this question about where do you get your morals from? Where do you get your morals from?
He's probably DCT. He's at DCT. I already think he's DCT, bro.
So you said you get it from the Bible?
It says that God has written his law in our hearts, and so we know what is good and what is evil.
Okay, so where does God get?
You don't.
Hold on, where does God get his morals from?
God determines it.
So God chooses what's good and bad.
Arbitrarily? Yes. Arbitrarily? Does it have a reason? Well, you're breaking up.
Yeah, I thought it was just me.
Dude, nobody heard you. You're breaking up.
I heard static. That's about it.
Take the rules.
My guy, you're breaking up. Go somewhere with the service.
Mm-hmm.
Yo, nobody can hear you.
Works.
You're breaking up, bro.
Thanks for the chilies.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that better?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. So if God is God,
does God arbitrarily?
Then he can.
Listen. Hold on. Does God arbitrarily choose what's right or wrong, or does he have some sort of reason as to why he picks certain things?
Yeah, and otherwise, is there an explanation why he chooses why this is bad as opposed to that's bad?
Yeah, he says he describes himself as God as love, and he determines what is good and evil. When he's in Genesis.
The question is in virtue of what is lying bad as opposed to not bad. What are the reasons for him to say that lying's bad?
Well, he can determine it. That's the answer. That is
the question. Answer. The question is in virtue of what does he determine that to be bad as opposed to good? Is there no explanation for why I'm asking if there's an explanation for his choice making.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of explanations for that if you follow what he's declared.
Okay, so what explains his decision?
Because he explains that he is constant and he is unchanging.
How does that explain it? What?
Well, good is, look, you've already agreed that God decides what's good, right? So that's not telling me anything. Yes. I'm asking you, when he chooses between what is good and what's not, what's the contrastive explanation, right? He chooses that to say that lying is bad, but you can make it by your lights that lying is good. So the question is in virtue of what does he decide to make it bad?
You're asking me to explain why he decided lying is bad. Am I following you?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Do you take it that bad is coextensive with what's undesirable to God?
Yes.
Oh, so then, but you are giving AR shit about desires, but you don't take it to be any different in the case of God. You just said that what is bad is what God finds undesirable. Yeah, but that's just a useless concept, because you can imagine a tyrant God where he tortures infinite babies, and you would imagine that the ordinary person wouldn't say that's good, right? Because you have what's called a praise or relativist view, when you pick a specific person and you say good is in terms of what they desire and bad in terms of what they don't desire. Right? And if that's all you're doing, you're not doing anything very different from what they are. Which also, I don't even, to be fair, I don't even think you reasonably interpret. I didn't think there was good leverage for interpreting AR as anything subjectivist. It just seems like you just fall afoul of the thing that you accuse AR of being a problematic view. You seem to have to endorse the same.
Yeah, it is subjective. It's subjective to God. Yo, you don't even realize that.
You see the difference.
According to God's stance, you're thinking that something is wrong according to God's stance. So that's stance dependent. Yes. Yeah, that's literally stance dependent.
So I've asked you basically for a standard of morals, and my standard is God. So what is your standard for morals?
That's subjective, though.
No,
that's what we're trying to tell you. What?
Well, maybe it's more proper to actually say it's anti-realist and not subjective. Because subjective is a more broad type of relativism that says that good is cashed out relative to any given person's values.
But that's God's, right? Isn't that?
Well, there's a view called appraiser relativism that's more strict and talks about a particular appraiser as opposed to relative person to person, and that good is cashed out strictly in terms of only what this person desires and doesn't. It's still an anti-realist view, and it's very similar to subjectivist, but subjectivist is like it's just
indexed to any given person X rather than some universal.
Yeah, like for example, like chocolate is good is subjective because it varies person to person, but you could like define good as it being desirable to John. So it's not gonna
universal. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
it's a catch-all. But either way, yeah. So you would still be an anti-realist at least, yeah.
My claim is that atheism doesn't give you any basis for morals at all.
According to what? Look, when you're saying that God. When you're saying that God has, do you think God has a reason as to why he chooses?
No, wait, he's saying something trivial though, because he already agreed that he's cashing out good in terms of what God desires, right? And then if what he's saying, if those words are synonymous, they're substitutable. Atheists have no basis for what God desires. Yeah, given we don't think there is a God who has desires.
Yeah, if that's all you're saying, then yeah, then why should we hold to God's?
That's fine.
Either you're saying something trivial, or you're saying that there's some concept of good that's actually divorced from the desires of God. To which then it's just true that you don't need God to have morals because they're like conceptually distinct. Or you're just saying that it's just tied to God, and then the atheist who doesn't believe in God doesn't have something that requires God, which isn't forceful against their view.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine a world where there's a God that wants everybody to grape everybody else or unalive everybody else. He just keeps creating people just to torture them. You think that's a good God?
I don't think we live in a world like that. So I wouldn't.
I'm saying if there were, imagine a world that does this. Imagine a world where you see a God that wants people to be unalived, that wants people to be raped. Just a world that's just a bunch of people getting tortured. Is that a good God?
He chooses that thing's good. He desires that thing, right? Yeah. By your lights, it's good, right?
Well, I don't agree on the premise, but if you wanted to,
let me ask you this: would you do it if God said it was good to torture babies? Would you do it?
Well, fortunately, he doesn't. So
that's not what I asked you.
I believe that. I'm saying, imagine God expects it, then it should be done.
I didn't ask you if he does say that, right? I asked you a conditional, which is if he said that, would you do it? Is the answer yes? If he said it, I would do it, or no?
So let's take your example out, but you're asking me whatever God declares good, would I follow that? Yes or no? Yes. Is the answer.
Oh, all right.
Okay. Even I would say no to that.
Wait, you're saying that you would grape a baby if God told you to?
I never said anything like that. I said that God declares good.
You just agreed to you just look. This guy's just look. We just obviously that just follows deductively. If for anything God says, then it's good, for anything God says it's good, and then, if everything God says is good, then I'll do it. God says to grape babies, therefore I would do it. That's just a basic deduction. And he was just asking to check for consistency with whether you would sign off on that. And then now you're just being inconsistent. You would grape babies, right?
May I chime in on this real quick?
I would not, because God didn't declare that to be good.
That's not what I meant.
Not in the actual world, in the world in which he does say that, right? There's a logically possible world he says that. In the world where he says that, right? He decided that graping babies was good. He desired that, right? And he declares you should do it. Would you do it?
And
I don't see any reason to answer this question on that basis because we don't live in a reality like that.
That's all right. You got that's enough cooking.
You're not understanding. Look, you're not understanding the issues here. You're saying that whatever God says is going to be good. So
No, no,
if you're-
AR, he's already cooked there though, because like the fact he's not saying no is already telling. He rather just evade the question, which shows what he's actually inclined to saying, but he doesn't want to.
that's
He's already
crazy.
cooked.
The few, are you saying that, bro? Are
I
you
just don't
saying-
want to step into a worldview that's absurd to its core and then go like, yeah, I think this is a good thing.
Okay, well,
Because
let me ask you
the
this:
whole premise
God
is
told you-
absurd.
so if it's like, say you were one of God's soldiers, okay, like the Israelites. You believe in the Bible, right? You believe in the Bible?
I do.
Okay, so if you're one of the Israelites and God told you to unalive all men and boys, married women, but keep all of the virgins to yourselves as captives, would you do it?
If that was a command by God, then I would be obliged to do it.
And then
I'd
so
be
you would
obligated to do it.
so you would grape those girls?
I never said that.
Well,
You said
he wants you to
keep
keep
them.
them as he wants you to keep those virgins as captives for yourselves, like for you guys to do whatever you want with.
I think
That's
we
why you
still live
that's why you're keeping the virgins captive.
No, well, I don't see that graping them is a necessity in that scenario.
Why do you think you're keeping the virgins?
Well, I think that if you're a decent human being, you can still court them, like, you know what courting means?
You think that
Treat
they
them with
want
decency
to?
and respect.
You think that they'd want? Yeah, you think that they'd want to engage in any type of activities with the captives that just unalived their husbands, not their husbands because they're
Their
virgins,
parents.
their parents.
Parents,
I wouldn't follow
brothers,
that that's a
sisters.
necessity for the first day, no, but in time, if you're integrated into society, who knows?
I'm asking you whether or not that's a good thing. If the army were to keep little girls captives, you think that's a good thing?
I don't know, man. I
You
wasn't
bring
there.
up flux.
But on
You wanna
your
bring-
on
I
the
just wanted
basis
to-
of atheism, what's the moral issue with any of that?
The
If
issue
we-
is
Wait, what's the issue?
we're
with-
living in a
hold on,
world
wait, are
that's
you saying? Hold on,
determined-
just to be very clear, are you saying that it's okay to keep little girls captives, to
I'm
kidnap
saying
little
on the
girls?
basis of atheism, everything's okay.
No, you're saying.
Wait, no, let's challenge him on that. Like, what's the argument for that? How does it follow if atheism is true, everything's morally permissible? How do you like defend that?
If by natural selection the fittest survive, so those that are not fit doesn't need to survive. So what's the issue?
What?
No one said that ethics is cashed out in terms. It doesn't even make any sense what you're talking about. You understand you just committed a naturalistic fallacy, right?
So,
Natural
so give me
facts
the
don't
antithesis to that.
correspond with natural facts don't correspond with normative facts. Facts about what is the case in nature doesn't mean it should be. So I don't know what's the point of natural selection, but that's also like an evolutionary process, which has nothing to do with moral philosophy. It's kind of a random insert to the conversation. I'm asking, how do you defend the statement if atheism is true and there aren't moral facts?
Yeah, so we're gonna evolve as species to a certain point, and then we're just gonna magically live in a different world with morals.
I'm confused. Are you saying that we couldn't know what the moral facts are, or there couldn't be moral facts? Because those are two different claims.
I would say that there couldn't be morals. Like, what kind of standard do you appeal to outside of
So you
your
think
subjective
moral
view?
properties would just disappear? if
No, not
God
disappear.
does-
I believe they would never develop in the first place.
Wait, why would you assume they need development? Why not think they're just irreducible value properties, that they don't come about by process, they just exist? You can have a view like that. So I don't know why you're assuming
No.
anything about development. When you say no, I'm
No,
just
I
talking
don't
about
think
a
so.
logically possible view.
Well, we don't see it in nature, do we?
We're not talking about seeing anything. We're talking about the possibility and how, if atheism is true, is that precluded? It doesn't have to be true of the actual world to be consistent with atheism. For example, unicorns don't exist, and atheism is consistent with the existence of unicorns.
Technically, they do. It's called a rhinoceros.
Hang on, I gotta look something up real quick. I just want to not paraphrase. Just give me 2 seconds.
Rhinos are too chubby.
They're still technically called
Yeah.
unicorns.
I mean, they're like that. That's like the nickname of them. But like we're talking about like a horse. We're talking about a horse with a horn, though.
Well, rhinos are horses.
Really?
Yeah, look at them.
I mean, they kind of look like one, I guess. What is the few trying to respond with? What are you doing? You saying you're looking something up?
Yeah, he said he's going
just,
to
just
ChatGPT.
want to quote something. No, it's not ChatGPT, by the way. Just want to quote something directly instead of paraphrasing. So in the words of Richard Dawkins, right?
Richard Dawkins doesn't know anything about philosophy, mind you.
Well, he's a prominent atheist, isn't he?
No, he's like a joke. He's like a pop atheist from 20 years ago. But atheist, yeah, he doesn't know anything about philosophy. Why would anyone care about his opinions? In fact, most atheists today are actually objectivists, and they have views that typically people like you don't have, that there's actually objective moral facts, while you think facts reduced to God's desires. They think that
he's a
moral facts are more robust than what you think.
Proponent of Darwinian evolution, so
Okay, well, I don't know why he would be. That's like an outdated. But what's the point of what is he going to say? Let's just read out the quote and see what it matters to the conversation. Because one, his opinion really doesn't matter whatsoever. Especially he's not credible in moral philosophy, right? But let's just see what it is he says.
So he says the universe that we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at the bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. In other words, no basis for morals.
Okay, and what's the point of quoting him? Do you have like a justification for what he says? Does he provide an argument you could recite, or what's going on?
Well, I mean, that is the argument. That is exactly what I stated, is that atheism doesn't provide the basis for morals.
You haven't provided that argument. You just said that. And then you just quoted someone who's incompetent in philosophy who agrees with you and doesn't provide an argument substantiating his own claim. You just basically quoted someone who regurgitates the claim. Yeah, but you're saying that's a consequence of atheism. Well, his statement doesn't say that's a consequence of atheism. But in any case, your claim is that you're using his quote and reading it as if he's also saying that. And neither of you guys are defending the claim. So what's going on? Do you like have an argument that if atheism, then no morals? Because that's the claim we haven't heard an argument for.
Well, that is my claim, and I would like you to give you.
Yeah, obviously that's the claim. Reason. What's the argument? You don't merely just claim something then ask someone else to like prove it's false if that's what you're trying to do. Oh, God, if polar bears exist, then God doesn't exist. Prove that wrong. No, if you make the claim if polar bears exist, then God doesn't exist, defend the claim. Like, why would anyone have any reason to believe that?
So then on the same premise, if you say there is no God, then what is the evidence for that?
Yeah, I'm not claiming there's no God. And right now, I'm down to offer you. Oh, well, I do have. Yeah, we can talk about that later, but we're talking about your current claim. So to not pivot, we tie up what your claim is and the defense for it. And then if you want to ask further questions following those events as to what are our reasons to think God doesn't exist, we're fine to endure you.
Okay, so my reason for believing that the morals are inherently tied to God is that he sets the
no, that's not what I asked
standard.
Why, if atheism is true? We already understand you define good in terms of what God desires, right? But you agree there's some other concept of good that's separate from God's desires. And I'm asking you on that account, why couldn't an atheist have morals?
I'm not saying an atheist couldn't have morals. I'm saying
that's quite literally what you've been saying. Now you're just switching up.
I'm saying the worldview doesn't allow for a basis for morals. The fact that you have morals.
Yeah, and what's the argument? Wait, what's the argument for that?
What?
That atheism doesn't allow for a basis for morals.
Well, I've explained it to you.
No, you haven't.
What
was the explanation?
By all the evolutionary processes, there's nothing that would declare any moral view of the world as a good thing.
You're just saying that evolutionary facts don't entail moral facts. I could agree to that. I've already told you that no one's saying that. No one says that morals somehow reduces to evolutionary processes. That's like not any atheist view. So that's not targeting anything.
So then if evolution is the answer to the universe, then
it's like saying that it's like saying theists, people believe in God, can't have morality because you can't get morality from evolution, right? But the people who believe in God aren't saying you get morality from evolution, as are the atheists. They're not saying that either. Right, so that's as much as that same rhetoric is as threatening as to your very own position, because neither position says comments anything about that.
No, you're not understanding what I'm saying.
Maybe I'm not. What am I not understanding?
If you say that morals are not derived from the natural process of evolution, then where did it come from?
Yeah, you don't need to be a naturalist about moral facts. And again, I told you that you don't need to think they come from anywhere, right? Because that's like presuming that they have some causal origin. You can think that they are explanatorily irreducible, that moral facts just happen to exist, and there's nothing that explains them. In the same way God does, right? God exists, nothing explains why God exists. There's not an external thing to God that brought him into existence. He just always existed. You could think moral facts and external values exist in that way. That's a view that an atheist could maintain.
There's a lot more evidence for
and also God. You realize this is what I asked you earlier, whether or not you're saying atheists couldn't know or whether it's inconsistent with atheism. You're asking me, as an atheist, what would be the causal origin, which I've already explained assumes that there even has to be one which there doesn't have to. But not having an answer as to what's the cause of them doesn't actually deter you from being consistent with the position.
Well, I just disagree with you on that. The fact that there is something to observe means that it has a beginning somewhere, or something determines it. And if you violate it, nothing happens, nobody cares, then
but
I'm inclined to sort of follow your reasoning.
But God doesn't have a cause, right?
No, he doesn't.
Okay, so why couldn't moral facts have the same sentiment?
Why couldn't morals just exist?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're abstract objects. Why couldn't they just be in that way causally inefficacious? So they don't have cause.
Well, I couldn't give you an example of why I think that is, because I don't think that is. So I can't.
I'm not asking you for an example of anything. I'm asking you what reason could you rule that out? And it seems like you don't have any. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't have any basis to believe that morals could just exist.
No, not that's not what I asked you. I didn't ask you if you had any basis to believe that you can have morals in that way. I said if you have any reason to rule that out as a consequence from atheism.
If I have any basis to rule that out, that it just exists.
Yeah, under the atheist picture, yeah.
Yeah, so I would say the subjectivity of the way we view morals on a that not everyone...
No, we're saying they're not subjective. Talking about a non-subjectivist account.
Observably, people act as if they are.
I'm talking about, look, I'm literally telling you an objectivist theory that's possibly true. Then I'm saying, imagine this theory is true alongside atheism. Are those two compatible? You're saying that it's logically impossible that an atheist has morals. And I'm giving you an objectivist theory about morality where it is actually consistent with atheism. And I'm asking you if you can actually show to me that it's actually inconsistent. So we're not talking about you think that morality is subjective. We're not talking about your beliefs. We're talking about a possible objectivist view and how you do anything to rule it out if atheism were true. How do you rule it out?
How do I rule that out? If it's an objective truth, and you're saying that it will exist with atheism and it's not incompatible.
Yeah, God doesn't exist and there's external moral properties in the world. They're not caused by anything. They just exist.
It's just inconceivable to me. It really is.
The truth of the view?
I just
most philosophers have a view like this today. It's actually, unironically, the most popular metaethical view. It's like moral Platonism. But I don't know what you're really even saying by it's inconceivable. I'm asking you if you can rule it out. Because I don't think the view makes any sense to you. That's what you're saying.
You're claiming something as observable in reality, and I just don't observe it the way that you do.
You know I'm not. Don't lie. You know I'm not saying that. You know I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's observable in reality. I'm not saying the view is true. I'm saying the view is possibly true. And it's consistent with atheism. And your claim is not that we don't have morality if atheism is true right now. You're saying atheism is inconsistent wholesale with the existence of moral properties.
Okay, I think I follow what you're trying to say. So you're saying it's possibly true. You're not claiming it is true, but it's possibly true. But if we
and your claim it's not possible.
We don't see, and
we're not talking about whether
of it.
That's not the claim. We're not talking about whether it's in the actual world. We're talking about possibility right now, not actuality, possibility. Your claim is it's not possible an atheist has morality. And this is a view that's possible. And by your lights, you're claiming it's impossible. I'm asking how you rule out its possibility. Not that it's not in the world. Again, I gave you an analogy to have you understand, but you seem to be pretty slow. Think back to the unicorns example. There's no instances of unicorns in the real world. We don't think unicorns are real. But the statement, if atheism is true, then unicorns don't exist is false. Because it's consistent with atheism, there's unicorns. They're logically compatible. Right? So we don't need to talk about whether there's unicorns in the actual world. We're talking more abstract. Whether or not, if atheism is true, could you rule out unicorns? Substitute unicorns for morals.
Okay, but I'm really not interested in talking about a hypothetical world. I base everything on this world that we know exists.
So you're saying right now, if atheism is true, there's no morality? That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Because the question just is, wait, but that doesn't, you understand that doesn't do anything. Wait, that doesn't do anything because how do you rule out the view I just described from being in the actual world?
Well, my reasoning would be that the fact that we have morals and we have some sense of reasoning that something can be bad or good.
But that means you're changing your claim. Now you're saying it is possible an atheist to have morality. Now you're just saying that if atheism is true right now, then there isn't morality.
You misheard me.
Yeah, you said
atheists.
No, I didn't mishear you.
I said
you said you're not talking in terms of hypotheticals.
Atheism doesn't provide the basis. An atheist can know what morals are.
See, now you're flipping and flopping because that statement is about hypotheticals. That's talking about in all worlds where atheism is true, there's no world where you can have morality and atheism. So that doesn't actually have to do with talk about the actual world. That actually has to talk about possibility. But you said, no, I don't want to talk about possibility. I want to talk about the actual world. Then I told you, okay, then you're not talking about atheism is inconsistent with morality. Now you're saying that if atheism were true right now, that's not the case. We have moral facts, right? But then you said, no, that's not what you're saying. You're saying that it's inconsistent with atheism, not atheism being true in this world. So now you have to make up your mind. You're not being consistent.
No, I am being consistent, but you
Okay, let me ask you this then.
To
Just for
settle into the fact
consistency.
that I'm not talking just about this world.
No,
but
you're being
also the
very,
way
I just
we
explained
view
why
the
you're being
world, which is a
inconsistent, but we
worldview.
can, right, you're being very inconsistent, but we can make this more clear. Are you saying it's in principle incompatible with the world where atheism is true, that there's morals?
Yes.
Okay, so then how in the world where atheism is true do you rule out there being external moral properties that don't have a cause?
Because the only way that you would get external moral properties is by consensus, which is then subjective.
No,
It means that there's no standard.
They're external to people's thoughts, beliefs, and opinions. They exist in the same way a planet does. Planets don't exist because people have a consensus. If people didn't exist, that planet would still exist. So I don't know what you make no sense. Again, we're talking about. We're talking. I said external. External. It's external, meaning not internal. There's properties of good and bad out in the world, whether or not people believe them. I'm saying on the view, there is external. What do you mean? Who determines it? What does that mean?
Yeah. How is it determined? Who determines it?
Who determines what?
The objective external standard.
There's no well, things are good and bad, and there's no reducible explanation.
You know, you're sophisticated in your terminology and your knowledge in that, but it's
we don't want the meta conversation. Just engage with what I'm saying.
It just is.
Right. I'm asking you how you wrote that out.
The only reason.
Well, it's the same of your view. God just decides what's good and bad. I don't. Yeah, I'm asking you on the view where moral facts exist. Okay, well, most ethicists today would disagree with you, but that's besides the point. And you don't know anything about moral philosophy, as you demonstrated, and you actually have a horrendous view that you would rape children if God said. So I don't know what you're talking, but that's besides the point, because what I'm trying to understand is how do you rule out the view that there's external moral facts if atheism were true?
If atheism were true, there's no lawgiver, there's no constant, there's nothing that even allows for that to exist. It's just random process that happened by chance.
Wrong. Already stop. You're just doing bullshit. Obviously, you know I'm well aware. Look, we have to be more for real here. You know what you're saying is false. I know you know what you're saying. You know it's false because you know you can be an atheist and a determinist. You can be an atheist and a non-naturalist. You don't need to think everything reduces to natural processes. You don't need to think anything's random. In fact, you can think nothing in the world is random and be an atheist. So you know you're talking about things that doesn't talk about atheism.
So in what basis then is things?
So let me just ask you.
Random.
Look, at best, you're saying that again, you're going to a question of how someone justifies their view. I'm talking about merely what's consistent with the view, not whether or not I believe it and whether I'm justified in believing it. Again, someone might not have justification that unicorns exist, but that doesn't matter because all I'm saying is that it's consistent with atheism, unicorns exist. Not that I believe unicorns exist and I'm justified in believing unicorns exist and I'm an atheist. Those are two different things. You got to stop confusing them. Your claim is something like, if atheism is true, then you can have unicorns. And that doesn't matter how someone justifies that there's unicorns, because you're saying something stronger. You're saying that it's not consistent, which isn't a matter of how someone's justified in believing anything. So how do you rule out that if atheism were true, that there's no morality? Now, you gave bullshit answers, which is, oh, well, if atheism is true, everything's random natural processes, which is already false. So we have to try it again and not smuggle in illicit features that are obviously not true of atheism. Understanding what atheism is, which is just the thesis, there's not a supernatural mind that created the universe. Doesn't say there aren't supernatural things. It doesn't say there aren't, there are instances of randomness, right? Just that there's not a supernatural mind that created the universe. How from that do you get that there's no morality?
Because if there is no supernatural mind that created the universe, then nothing is governed by any sort of law or consistency.
Yeah, that's also false. There could be laws. Laws can exist without them being created, right? In the same way God exists and nothing created it. Right? God's mind itself, right, is like law governed, right? He's a rational person. His mind's governed by rational constraints. And there's nothing that causes God's mind to be that way, right? So yeah, there's already on your own view, law-like structures that don't have an explanation. So on the atheist view, you can have physical laws or moral laws, right, where they don't have something explaining them. Nonetheless, they exist. In the same way, God has rational constraints about his mind, and there's nothing that caused his mind or those rational constraints. Right.
Yeah,
So
okay,
how
I
do you rule it
suppose
out?
in a way, I can agree with you that God doesn't conform to the constraints that we have as creation, as people.
No one even made any mention of that.
Say again?
Yeah, no one's talking about that. I'm talking about God being a rational agent, meaning he acts on the basis of reason.
Yes, it does.
Right. Yeah, and that's law-like, and those types of rational laws you can say that God abides by doesn't have a cause. Okay, right. So then we don't need, it's not necessary that there has to be an explanation for laws. So when you said there's nothing that explains moral laws if atheism is true, not only is that statement not true, you can have an adequate causal picture, but you don't even need to think they have a cause because you just agreed it's true of God that he doesn't need a cause for his types of law-like structures.
Well,
Okay,
I
so then
think I
that's not
understand
an
now
argument against the view.
I think I understand where we sort of split the path here. Is you're telling me that because God can do something like that, then on that basis we should be able to do it too. But
Do
the
something.
way
I'm
that
not
we
talking about
operate
God
is
doing. No, I never mentioned anything about God doing anything. I never mentioned God doing stuff, nor us doing stuff either. I'm talking about on your metaphysics, it's possible law-like structures don't have a cause. So long as that's possible, the question you've asked was unreasonable because it assumes they need a cause. But I highlighted by your own lights that's not true. And if it's not true, then what you're asking is illicit because it assumes it has to be true in a way to gerrymander atheism as looking worse than what it is. But by your own view, that question is unreasonable because you don't think that's true, that assumption.
okay.
It's a loaded question.
I'm gonna attempt to rephrase it again without you interrupting and rambling on about it again. You're saying on the basis that God has the ability to have rational thought without being caused or any external force exerted on him, then by that same means that I believe that that's possible, we should be able to do the same. We should be able to operate in a way that, you know, is law-like
No,
and rational.
no,
consistent.
moral law is not having a cause. There's nothing that causes moral facts and properties. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't see that there's any reason to believe that, really. I don't.
Again, we're not talking, you know, that doesn't matter, right? Someone can be irrational. There could be no good reason in the world to think unicorns exist. We're not talking about whether or not you're justified in believing unicorns exist. We're talking about whether it's possible atheism and unicorns are both true, right? That there exist unicorns and no God.
Okay.
Right? Again, we're just talking about the compatibility of two views, not whether one view is true or justified.
Around the topic, but you're jumping between the hypothetical and how it doesn't apply to the actual, and then you're going from the actual and how it
because the
doesn't apply to
hypothetical could be true of the actual world, because the hypothetical could be true of the actual world. In fact, most philosophers today do think it's true of the actual world, which is funny enough, but that actually doesn't matter, right? Because the claim you are making is of a hypothetical. You're saying something not about the actual world. You're saying something that is about atheism abstractly. You're saying that if atheism were true, then there couldn't be morality.
Yes.
Right, and I'm asking you, how do you rule that out?
I observe the actual world as it stands and I apply the philosophy of atheism to it, and I go, oh, that really doesn't make any sense.
I'm asking you, how do you rule it out? Meaning, how do you show it's
That's how I rule it
possible?
out. Because I find it incompatible with actual reality. Yes, it's maybe in concept.
I'm asking you
I'm
asking you what's the contradiction in the view there's external moral properties in the way I described and atheism is true. I'm making it easier for you because you're saying all forms of morality are inconsistent. I'm just naming a particular one and you can't even answer.
Well, I just can't see any reasonable reason.
That's just incredulous.
Moral to exist if you have.
I can't see isn't a criticism. Look, I can't see how under your view you have any morality. Right? That's not a criticism. That claim I don't see isn't a justification. Theists can't have morality. Right? So you should be, by your own standards, you should understand how that's obviously a malformed reason. It's just fallacious. Oh, I can't see how atheists have morality, therefore they can't. Oh, I can't see how God can exist, therefore he can't. Like, what? That's what we're doing. I can't see it, therefore it's true. That's what you resorted to.
I've given you reasons. I'm asking you. Rejected all of my reasons. So
you haven't. You haven't provided any reason. No, you haven't provided any reasons.
I've provided many.
What was one reason you provided?
I told you that there's.
What was one reason?
See that there's an objective standard, and then you go, oh yeah, that can just.
Well, no, you've actually agreed there isn't an objective standard. But I'm asking you, what was the reason you said?
I said God said you provided objective standard.
So no, I'm asking you, what's the reason? Well, no, you've already agreed it's not objective, but I'm asking you, what was the reason to think that there couldn't be morality if atheism is true? Is what I'm asking.
Because nobody set the objective standard in an atheistic.
Okay, but is the claim that if no one set it up, then there's no moral standard? Because you never defended that claim, mind you.
I mean, what would the reason be for a moral standard in an atheistic
That's
world?
not an
There's
answer to my
just
question.
Absolutely no reason for it.
Yeah, right. That's not an answer to my question.
Well, I don't think your question has any answers because you set your question in a way that it has no answers.
You said you had answers. You literally said it had answers. You said you had the reason, right? But then when you said what your reason was, you said you made a set of claims and you never defended those claims. That's why I'm asking you for clarification. If this is the claim you said, then defend it. You know, what do you mean? I'm asking you if you could defend your claim. Look, you said that under atheism, there's no one who sets up the laws, right? But it sounds like what you're saying is if no one sets up the laws, then there couldn't be morality, right? But that's like me saying that if someone sets up the laws, then there's no morality. Theism commits you to saying that the laws are set up, therefore there's no morality. I can say that, but the question is, how do you defend the statement that if they're set up, then God doesn't, or sorry, if they're set up, then morality doesn't exist, right? And inversely, if they're set up, then there is a morality.
Yeah, okay, we can go around in circles about this all day, but we're obviously not going to agree with one another.
Don't act like we're just a blockade. Obviously, that's untrue. All right. You can be honest and say you're stumped, you don't have an answer, right? And you want to come back and maybe answer, maybe not. Maybe you've gotten a corner and you understand you don't care for philosophy and you just regurgitate slimy apologetic rhetoric and you're not going to actually have anything for the next 10 years, right? You can do something like that, but obviously we haven't been in circles, right? You've just been very evasive, right? You've been acting as if you've been providing anything when you haven't. It's not a matter of, oh, this is like the third time we went roundabout. I guess we're just not meeting each other. No, you're just being a dodger, right? It seems you have nothing to put forward.
Well, I think we were not too different on that matter, but yes, I can agree that I'm not the most eloquent debater.
Obviously, that's untrue.
Still a lot to learn.
I'm not the one who's making those claims who can't be defended.
Yeah,
what are you talking about? I'm not even making any.
But you did make
what claim am I making?
That morals can exist without any sort of reason for it. It just exists.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's true.
So if
God
that's the case, and you break the moral code or the standard, then what? Nothing. Then there's no reason for it either.
No, that doesn't follow from what I said. Now you're just again you're doing the same illicit stuff. Now you're smuggling in bullshit. You know that was never said. Of course, there can be consequences from not obeying the moral facts. No one said that. Why do you? Let me ask you this: Where do you? No, don't do that bullshit. Don't do that. Where do you think from what I've said that there isn't consequence? Is there anything I said that supported that claim?
Yes, actually.
Okay, what did I say?
You said it just exists.
Okay, and how does that support that claim?
Okay, so display to me how it doesn't.
That's just burden shifting. What are you talking about?
You said earlier that if you make a claim, which you did, then you should be able to defend it. So defend it then.
You're the one making.
You said
the claim.
That morals can just exist.
Right. Yeah, because you already agree that things can exist without cause. I gave you the example of God. So long as that's permissible in your metaphysics, then one can think the same of moral properties.
So your defense is that your view is true because you think my view.
I didn't say this is my view. I'm saying what's a possible view, whether or not I believe it. I'm just showing to you how the view is possible by your own lights. Both, even though I hate using this phraseology, it's metaphysically possible, but it's obviously logically possible. But I'm showing something further than it merely being logically possible and how you have good enough reasons to think it's possible in some even more narrow way.
Okay, so let me then ask you an honest question. Just for the sake of having an answer, and you can decide to not answer it if you choose.
Wait, but I don't get it. Why would we just get off where we are and have you just answer a question? You're the one
because
supposed
I'm
to be
asking
answering
a question now.
Right, but I'm asking a question.
Okay, but I'd like to have an answer for this. I can.
Well, so would I.
Like
you think I ask questions to not get an answer?
Okay, so would you like me to then concede that in this debate I've been defeated, and then I can ask my question?
I just want to know what your answer is to the question I'm asking.
I don't know.
Are you saying you don't have an answer?
I don't have an answer right now, no.
Oh, okay.
Okay, can I ask my question now?
Go ahead.
So if morals simply exist, which is a possibility and not necessarily the actuality, if I'm phrasing it correctly in your words, then, and you're saying that it follows still that there can be consequences, what would the consequence be?
You can go to an atheist hell, for example. Just imagine an atheist hell. You go to hell if you do bad things, enough bad things that maybe there's a moral calculus, and you weigh the amount of goods and bads you do, and if you do more bads than goods, then you go to hell, and vice versa, you do enough goods, you go to heaven. Like the same, paradigmatically, the same thing as you. You go to hell if you do bad, you go to heaven if you do good, but there's no God. The hell and heaven isn't made by a God, right? He doesn't put you in there. You just go there after you unalive, based on like some type of mechanical system that integrates with moral facts. Just imagine a world like that. And mind you, this is not my world either, or my view, I mean.
So what is your view
on ethics?
No, just in like how the world sticks together. Are you an atheist? Are you a
world sticks together? I'm an atheist, yeah. Well, technically not, but yeah, I'm an atheist. At least we can work with that.
Classic atheism.
Materialistic. Well, I don't. No. I knew you were gonna. I was right about to say. Once you said classical atheist, I was gonna say I bet you don't know what classical atheism is, and then you said materialism, which actually no atheists today. Yeah, no classical atheists today are materialists, and actually haven't been for probably at least the past 100 years or something like that.
Okay, well, so help me out. What is the right term and what is the better term? How do you summarize
atheist?
I mean, you'd
atheist is just that a God doesn't exist.
The same question.
Materialism is a completely different philosophical subject. Sorry, I got out the app. I said that materialism is a subject in philosophy, specifically metaphysics, about substance. Atheism doesn't tell you anything about what substances exist, whether all substance are comprised of matter. Only material substance exists. Atheism doesn't say anything like that. It just says a God doesn't exist. Look, if I say John's dog doesn't exist, you don't know if I think everything's matter. You don't know if I think there's an afterlife. None of those follow from the view John's dog doesn't exist. Just make that an analog all the time with atheism. That's all it's saying. It's just saying a particular entity doesn't exist, not that the whole world is fundamentally composed of matter. Obviously, that's like so crazy to think that follows from just saying John's dog doesn't exist. As crazy as it is to say that God doesn't exist.
Okay, I'm trying to.
Or when I say that John's dog doesn't exist, then I think morality is all subjective. Or if I don't think John's dog exists, then there is no morality. It's not possible there's morality. That's how dumb all the things you're saying it has been.
Okay, well, thanks for personifying me in that way. I'm really trying at this point just to understand your view, and I'm not even challenging it. I'm just asking you questions. So if you want to ridicule me,
all right, my apologies. Well,
it's fine.
Yeah, but I'm saying that you have. Okay, yeah, I'll be more kind. That's my apologies. But I'm saying that this is what I'm seeing. Right, I'm seeing it as it's like so unpalatable how you smuggle in these assumptions that are clearly not present in the view. Just as similar as one who doesn't think. Imagine you had a friend named John, right? And John, we have the proposition John has a dog. Imagine thinking that statement is false, and then John telling you, well, if you don't think I have a dog, then you can't have morality. That's basically what you've been doing this whole conversation. Or saying that, well, if you don't think I have a dog, then you think everything's composed of matter. Right? It's just so strikingly nonsense, right? Obviously, if I don't think there's a God, I don't think everything's made of matter. No, I'm calm. I'm not frustrated anymore. I'm calm. I'm just explaining to you how your assumptions and questions, or questions that assume certain views about atheism, are as unreasonable as assuming that if I don't believe John has a dog, then I think everything's made of matter, or I think there's no morality. It's like analogous. Is the point? Don't you see how it's ridiculous, though?
How do you think the world got to where it is now? Like you said, you're not materialist. I may have gotten that wrong. What is?
No, I'm not a materialist.
Actual view
on how the universe came to be? Like, are you asking what caused the universe? I don't think the universe has or even could have a cause.
So you're of the view that it's eternally existent?
Not quite. I'm indifferent to a view like that.
Well, I mean, we know it exists now. And if you don't believe that there was a start or origin of it, then it must be, it's just either.
Look, there's like a trivial way it always exists, right? Because always is like a time. It's like a tense verb, right? Always is talking about in every instance of time. And the universe is space-time. So in every instance there's time. That's just the universe, right? So obviously in that way. But there's certain philosophical questions like whether there's such thing as ontological priority. There's something that is not before in a temporal way, but ontologically prior, which I'm not going to get into that. I find a lot of that.
I think I follow what you're saying. If there's no definitive point in time, you can't technically have it before, but there must be a state before, which is hard to define.
I don't think the universe can have a cause because I don't think atemporal causation makes any sense. Meaning causes causes outside of time is just gibberish to me. There's like no such thing, right? That just sounds like a made up. It's like magic or something. It's like, what the hell are you talking about, right? So when you say the universe has having a
Okay.
cause, you're talking about something outside of time causing the universe. That doesn't even sound like a meaningful thesis to me. But suppose I do think it is. I mean, I guess I can, since I'm assuming it is a meaningful view. Let's say it's possible. Yeah, I just don't have reasons to think something like that.
Okay. So on the your view, at least, the impossibility of that, then I mean, there's only, it does exist or it doesn't exist. So then it must be in an eternal state. Yeah, it's always existed. It will always, in some form or way, exist. Is that more or less accurate?
Well, no, I'm saying that it's at least possible it didn't always exist. In the other way I'm talking about, not in time, like in terms of, maybe you want to say, like ontological orientation, right? That there's something that's ontologically before the universe, where though in every instance of time the universe existed, there's like some other way we can say that the universe didn't always exist.
So you mean that it existed in a different kind of state before we knew or have the means for time?
No, I'm saying that it's not the first existent thing. So I'm saying it always exists in time, but you can imagine if there's such thing as existing outside of time, that there's something that existed in that way and caused the universe.
Yeah, I mean, in my view, that I would simply call that God.
Of course not, right? That's not what's sufficient for calling God, because that could be a natural thing, right? And God's not natural. It could also be without a mind, right? It could be like a natural force without a mind. But God is both supernatural and has a mind. So those are at least the two minimal conditions for being something like a God: having causal powers. Well, three: having causal powers, having a mind, and being supernatural. So of course, there's like multiverse theories who have the same view, right, about the universe. Right? They say the same thing, and obviously they're not theists, right? Because if you said, I call that God, a multiverse theorist, that thing would qualify as God by your lights, right? The multiverse, which doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, something without a mind typically doesn't create things in a structured manner. So, I mean, that from my point
Yeah, I mean,
of
I
view,
just disagree with that, but
follow that bit.
Yeah, but again,
Can demonstrate
we're just talking about
anything
what's
that
possible.
is a mindless process.
No, that doesn't matter. I have instances of things that are obviously orderly and of complex physical structures, and I don't have any good inference to them being designed, right? So that's good enough, right? Like when I say a planet, it's orderly and it's very complex, and there's no good inference to it being designed, right? And that's obviously, as you said, you have no example. Yeah, we don't have background information that thing's designed, unlike cars or something. So of course, in that way, that's an example.
Okay, no, I think I understand where we differ, and I'm happy to call it a difference. I'll agree to disagree on this one.
What is the thing we're just disagreeing on?
Well, just simply
that like planets are designed.
Well, that you think that there's a possibility that everything, could have existed in some form outside of time, in a different format, not physical, and like we know it in time now, and that for no reason by natural process can change from that state to the existent world as we see it.
No, that's not what I said. I said there's something. No, I didn't say the universe changed form. I said that there's something that caused the universe, and that thing that caused it is outside of space-time. It atemporally caused the universe. So it's not the universe changing form. It's something that's not the universe causing the universe.
Okay, so you agree on that premise, but you're just not willing to say that God is a necessity for that.
Well, I'm not agreeing that that type of thing is true. I'm saying that type of thing is consistent with atheism. And like explained, yeah, that's obviously not sufficient to say it's God, because God's a supernatural mind. If it's not supernatural and it's not a mind, then it's obviously not God, right? There's views like multiverse theory that thinks that further, more fundamental natural entities in universes cause further ones. So they're outside those space times, and they cause atemporally, right? And they're natural.
That just
right. Look, we don't need a battle on that. We're not talking about whether that view is true. Don't make that mistake again. We don't need to talk about multiverse theory. I'm just talking about a possible view that has the same conditions. Just it has a cause, right? And this is a view where it has a cause, but it also doesn't have a mind, and then it doesn't introduce supernatural things, right? Even if you think the view makes no sense or it's false, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about that's a view that fits that picture where obviously it's not going to be God.
Well,
so you have to do more to get to God from that.
That particular view does assume supernatural, because natural is what we know is natural in this instance of the universe. If we assume that there's a multiverse, then that would be super to the natural that we know here, which is not natural here, which is supernatural. Supernatural
Yeah, that's
literally
not
just means it's not
what's
not natural
supernatural.
here.
Yeah, that's not how that works. Natural isn't relative to this universe.
So what does supernatural mean then?
You can think that natural laws, yeah, natural just means anything governed by natural laws. That there's like true, maybe you want to say dispositions, like certain forces of the universe or stuff. You can think that everything is fundamentally law governed, right? Like the whole multiverse itself, there's something more primitive, which is like certain forces that constrain the multiverse, right? So the most fundamental thing is like forces, where God is not that type of thing, right? There's no strings on God. There's strings on the multiverse. Supernatural things are the types of things that don't have strings. God isn't regulated by any more fundamental laws, right? He doesn't have certain like fundamental dispositions or something, where he's not regulated.
No, but if you, at least in my view, if we read the Bible, you see that God self-regulates. He sets laws and he abides by the ones that he actually sets himself. He doesn't.
Yeah, but that's a
contradict his own
different.
laws.
But that's a different sense of what we're talking about.
Yeah, well, like I said, we are going to end up agreeing to disagree at some stage. Maybe we even disagree on what we disagree on.
I mean, you agree that just saying that the universe has a cause doesn't get to God, because if I said that thing doesn't have a mind, it's obviously not a theistic view.
No, I don't agree with that because it's.
You don't think God needs a mind?
I think God needs a mind. I think you
Okay,
cannot
but
conceive
wait, then you
the
agree with me.
universe from an ungoverned process.
Well, no one said it's not governed, right? But I'm saying that if you think that the cause for the universe doesn't have a mind, then obviously, as you agree, that's not a God, right? You agree that for there to be a God, there has to be a mind, and obviously you can think the universe has a cause, and that doesn't tell you whether the cause has a mind, right? It's like an open question, right? So obviously, then, yeah, it's just saying that, because at first you said, well, if you agree it has a cause, then you agree that there's God. No, because saying there's a cause doesn't mean there's a mind, and a mind is necessary for there to be a God.
I understand where you're going with it, but my claim is that this universe cannot exist by ungoverned, unguided processes.
Okay, no one's saying that there is something like that. Yeah, but no one's saying there's anything like that.
Well, my claim
It's funny because the person you quoted
that
earlier,
whole situation exists because God set it in motion that way.
yeah, but I'm saying you don't need to think that it's unguided if you're an atheist, right? It's funny because you quoted, what was it,
Richard Dawkins.
Darwin or whatever. Yeah, it was Dawkins, Richard Dawkins. That he thinks the same thing. He thinks that there isn't unguided processes. He thinks that there's a complete like explanatory picture, that there isn't randomness, unguided processes. He doesn't think stuff like that. And he's obviously like a complete buffoon, but even the buffoon atheists, right, that you've quoted have the view it's unguided. Or sorry, that's guided. That's not unguided.
No, his claim is that it is unguided.
No, it's not.
No, that's not what he says.
Yeah, he thinks that the effects he thinks the certain phenomena have certain physical explanatory stories, right? Like there's like causal stories in the physics providable for those facts, that they're not random. He doesn't think there's randomness.
No, he probably would agree that there's the laws of physics and all the rest of the.
Yeah, he doesn't think that there's non-governed processes or randomness. You said like random process and ungoverned process. He doesn't think stuff like that. He thinks the opposite. He thinks the whole world is law governed and everything has
eventually
a determined.
If you go far enough. Yeah, so
I'm just showing you that not only is this obviously not true of atheism, but most atheists don't think this. That's all I'm trying to show you. Like the dumb atheists don't think this.
I understand. But if you take
but why do you characterize atheists as thinking something like that?
Because if you take it far enough back, you have to go, there was no mind in putting these laws into place and structuring things the way they are, and it just happened.
But that's the same for God.
I don't know why.
God is governed by rationality, and there's nothing that puts God's rational laws into place. We've already established this, that you think that there's certain things that are fundamentally unexplained about God's dispositions, and I can think the same of the universe, that fundamentally the universe has the same natural dispositions, and it just doesn't have an explanation for it. So you and I are doing the same thing, acting as if like you're doing something better when you just add God and then say it's true of God, but not the universe. And act like.
I'm not saying I'm doing something better than you. I'm saying that all I know about God is what God has revealed, and the best source for that for me is.
I'm saying the thing you're accusing me of doing, which doesn't make sense, or atheists are saying, is the same thing you're saying. So that couldn't be an objection. It's not an objection if you fall afoul of the same thing.
Well, I don't have a good answer for you on that. I suppose then we just each think that our reason is better than
Right.
the
Look,
next
God
person.
acts on the basis of reasons, right? So he's like reason governed, right? He's like governed by laws of reason. And there's nothing that explains that. There's not a cause for that. There's not something external to God that gives him those types of rational constraints. He just has them. Right? That's the same thing that you just described, where an atheist says that laws of physics are just in place and there's nothing that makes them that way. The laws of physics govern the world. And there's no explanation why there are those laws of physics. You're saying the same thing of God. So you're not doing anything different.
Well,
You're just applying it to a different entity and acting as if that's like any less problematic, which I don't think it's a problem whatsoever. But if you think it's a problem, then that means then clearly you would have to revise your own view.
well, I will give it some thought. Definitely, it's always good to contemplate these things, but yeah, I just see a lot more reason to believe that God, with the mind determining the universe, is a lot more sensible than to go, well, nothing created or determined or set in motion, and they just happen to be.
Well, God's rationality just happens to be.
Yeah.
In fact, that's an obvious reason why atheism would be preferred. It's parsimonious. Right? You're not if you're going to do the same thing of God, there's no point of introducing God, right? Because you could just say the same of the universe and not introduce unnecessary number of entities and types, right? Disembodied
If we're
supernatural
going
beings.
to reduce it to a very simplistic math, then when we go from zero, and zero becomes something, we've at least broken the rule of mathematics, which is 0 equals 0.
What are you talking about? What does that have to do with what we're saying?
If the universe started from somewhere and nothing created it, then there's nothing.
No, it's what? Dude, just think about God. When you say God just exists, you're not saying he was zero and then he came into existence out of nothing. No, you're saying he just always exists. There was never zero. There was
Yes.
one God.
Yes.
Yeah, that you're mistaking. Oh my God, this is so low level. You're not saying the universe popped into existence from nothing. You're saying the universe exists and there's no cause for it. In the same way God is. So no, there isn't that zero thing coming from zero, or else that would be true of God. Because you and the atheist, again, are saying the same thing.
I did ask you that you have the view of...
Is God breaking the laws of mathematics when he
exists?
Is God breaking the law of mathematics when he exists?
You described God as being eternal, and I asked you earlier if the universe is eternal, it just always existed, and you said no.
No, I didn't say that. I said you can have the view it has a cause, and you don't get to God. I literally told you that's not my view. I literally explained to you atemporal causation makes zero sense to me. I remember we went over that I don't think the universe could even have a cause. Right? And I said it's not my view that the universe begins or has a cause. In fact, I don't even think it's possible the universe has a cause. Then you asked me why, and then I said, oh, because atemporal causation makes no sense. I said it's like magic. We went over this whole thing.
Okay,
I
so
made it
then
very
the
explicit. This is not my view. Oh my
Fine.
God!
So then
You can't track for the love of
is-
God that you believe in. The God you love, you can't track.
So you said that it has no cause. It hasn't. Then
I said if we
it must
grant
be
it has a
eternal.
cause, it doesn't get to God.
Okay. So do you think it is eternal, or do you think it is not eternal?
I told you I'm indifferent. Remember when I used the word indifferent? Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I'm indifferent to whether the universe is eternal or not. In fact, most of cosmology is. So. Right, yeah, there's no good reason to think something like that.
Then we're never going to end up in a place where we can agree on most things, because it's, you're going to be indifferent to the things that are fundamental, and then that just goes, oh, well, I don't care. It doesn't matter.
I'm not doing anything like that. I'm indifferent to views where I don't have good reasons to think either way. I don't think you have an argument that the universe began to exist. Unless I'm mistaken, I'm down to hear any argument, and I will update on the argument. Maybe you can convince me, but that's very unlikely because you clearly know no philosophy, and I've heard the pictures from cosmologists and philosophers of physics thinking the universe has a beginning, and there's no good reason.
So the law of non-contradiction, right? It either exists or it doesn't exist. It's either existent or it isn't existent.
Yeah,
For it to either exist or not exist, it either has a beginning to exist, or it does not have a beginning and it's always existed. It's eternal. It's only one of those two things.
That it's either has a first moment or it has. It's true. It either has a first moment or doesn't.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
That's all I've been saying, and you've said
I haven't been disagreeing with that ever.
For it to be cause, so then
right.
The only other.
Well, I'm saying I don't even have reasons to think it has a beginning.
It's eternal.
I'm saying I don't. No,
so if you don't see good reason,
no, that's not. No, that's not true. You can think it has a beginning and no cause. I'm saying I don't have reason. I said even if I grant you as a beginning and a cause, we don't get a God. If it had a beginning, I don't see a reason to think it has a cause, and I don't have reason to even think it has a beginning.
Okay, but I'm not even asking about God right now. All I'm asking is the existence.
I know I'm not talking
of
about
the
God either.
universe.
I'm
Do you
talking about the
think it's-
universe. Right. We're on the. I thought we're on
do
the
you
same
think it
page.
started?
No,
you think it
how much
started, or
more
it's just
clear
always
do I have to make this? The answer is no. I don't think that. This was said ad
Okay,
nauseum.
so it's eternal and always been.
No, I said I'm indifferent. I don't think the universe either has a beginning or doesn't have a beginning. I don't have a view on cosmogony.
Okay, but then we've departed from reason now because
No, you've never heard of
there's
agnosticism?
either
I'm not look, when someone says, is LeBron James sitting? You can either have the attitude that it's false he's sitting, you can have the attitude it's true he's sitting, or you can lack an attitude altogether. That's what agnosticism or indifference is. It's called doxastic indifference. It's when you don't have a view on the proposition. I'm saying because there's no good reasons either way on whether the universe has a beginning or doesn't, I don't have an opinion on the matter. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's true and false. It has a beginning. Jesus Christ.
So would you define your belief system as agnostic then?
Agnostic as to the beginning of the universe.
Okay.
Not I'm an atheist, like said about theism, right? About philosophy of religion, but I'm agnostic specifically on the proposition the universe began to exist.
Okay. I mean, I'm hearing you. I just can't make any sense of it. And I know that
Do
you're
you have any
choosing to
arguments
be
the universe
indifferent.
began to exist? Well, I've looked into the arguments for the universe having a beginning, and none of them are good. I don't know if maybe you have any good arguments. I mean, to be honest, I'm fairly suspicious you have any arguments whatsoever.
I mean, do you have an argument for? You said you've looked at the arguments for the beginning. Have you thought about the ever existent proposition?
The what?
It's not my view. I'm just curious.
I didn't hear what you said. The what?
Have you thought about the universe, the possibility that it has always existed?
Yeah.
And do you find any basis for that?
You mean reason? No, that's why I'm indifferent. There's no reason on either side.
Okay.
Well, actually,
Yeah,
there's
at
reasons
this
to
point,
think.
There are models.
Either.
There are
So
models that
you don't care.
there are models that have like some sort of beginning, and there are also models that have.
I didn't say I don't care.
An eternal universe,
Okay.
right? Like,
That's what the difference is.
But there, to be clear, let me actually, because I did misspeak, there are reasons on both halves. One is like having a complete explanatory story, right? Because given our information, it's improbable that there's brute facts. And then on the other side, you're just like, so on one side, you're multiplying entities and violating parsimony. And on the other, you're committed to something improbable, which is the existence of a brute fact. So those are going to be the reasons on the two horns. But if anything, maybe I do think it's more likely as a brute fact than there's an infinite regress. But in any case, yeah, neither of the two sides have compelling reasons.
Okay. I understand your argument. it's not my personal view, obviously.
But to be clear, I said I'm more inclined to thinking it has a beginning.
Yeah, and I'm more inclined to agree with you on that point. And,
But you just said that's not your
I
personal
understand
opinion. Or were you referring to something else?
No, I said if you lean towards it has a beginning, that makes a lot more sense in the way that I see the world. Just from my perspective. So I'm more inclined to agree with you on that point than disagree.
Okay.
you have anything else for us?
Trying to find common ground. No, I think that's it for today. Thank you, and thanks for having this conversation. I mean, I'm not just here to disagree and debate. I'm actually part of this is just understanding and learning as well.
Thank you for coming up. Like the page,
have a good one.
Cheers, thank you.
like and share, tap. All right, we'll try to get the next person.